dawn breaks over a world that would terrify and fascinate in equal measure, where every sunrise brings a desperate gamble with mortality, yet human ingenuity and community bonds forge pathways to survival that echo through millennia. The first sensation that jolts you from the depths of ancient sleep isn't the gentle birdsong of rural tranquility. It's the cacophonous symphony of urban desperation that begins each day in the year 300 CE. If you use these videos to fall asleep, subscribe so you don't miss any new ones. Leave a comment with your thoughts on the video and any suggestions you have for future ones. Before your eyes even flutter open in the dim pre-dawn light filtering through the narrow window slits of your cramped cubicula, the soundtrack of survival assaults your consciousness like a physical blow. The rumble begins deep in the earth. Heavy wooden wheels grinding against uneven cobblestones as merchants race to reach the markets before the wealthy wake. The clatter of iron-shod hooves echoes through the canyon-like streets between towering insulae, while somewhere in the distance, the rhythmic hammer strikes of a blacksmith already at work send metallic percussion reverberating through the morning air. But it's the intimate sounds that truly mark your new reality. The persistent crying of infants whose mothers have no choice but to let them wail. The harsh coughing of neighbors struggling with respiratory ailments that will likely kill them. And the muffled arguments seeping through walls so thin they might as well be made of parchment. This is not the Rome of marble statues and imperial grandeur that history books celebrate. This is the Rome where you must now survive, where over 1 million souls crowd into a space designed for far fewer, where every morning brings the same fundamental question: will I live to see another sunset? Your apartment, if the generous term applies to this wooden box, stacked 5 stories above the streets, groans and sways with the morning breeze like a ship in rough seas. The building beneath you was constructed with proper brick and mortar. But up here in the heights where rent is cheapest and danger greatest, everything is wood, desperation, and prayers to household gods who seem increasingly distant. You can feel the structures settling and creaking around you, each sound a potential harbinger of the collapse that claimed an entire section of apartments just 3 streets over last month. As consciousness fully takes hold, you begin to comprehend the precarious physics of your new existence. You are living in what amounts to a vertical slum, one of approximately 47,000 insulae that house the vast majority of Rome's population in conditions that would make modern refugees weep. The wealthy, of course, live in sprawling domus with private gardens, running water, and walls thick enough to muffle the sounds of the city. But such luxury is as distant from your reality as the gods themselves. The irony isn't lost on you that the higher you climb, the closer you are to heaven and to death. Fire, the constant terror that haunts every Roman's nightmares, spreads upward with terrifying speed through these wooden upper floors. If flames begin on the ground level, you'll have mere minutes to escape down those steep, narrow stairs before smoke and heat make descent impossible. The poet Juvenal captured this brutal reality. Smoke pours out, but on the top floor you know nothing of it. For if the alarm begins on the ground level, he who lives in the attic will be the last to burn. But first, before confronting the dangers that await outside your thin walls, you must honor the gods. not out of mere piety, but out of desperate practical necessity. In a world where death lurks around every corner, divine protection isn't spiritual luxury, it's essential insurance for survival. Stumbling from your straw mattress, which offers about as much comfort as sleeping on a pile of kindling, you make your way to your small household shrine, the lararium. Even in this cramped space barely larger than a modern closet, this sacred corner is absolutely essential. Here, in a simple wall niche, stand small painted figures or crude clay statues representing your household lairs, the guardian spirits, who, if properly honored, might protect your home and family from the countless disasters that claim lives daily. With arms outstretched in the traditional Roman fashion, you begin your morning prayers, whispering the ancient words, even as the building sways around you. Salve, lar familiaris. Salve, di penates. Greetings, household lar. Greetings, divine penates. You place a small offering on the shrine, perhaps a crust of bread, if you're fortunate enough to have saved some from yesterday, a few precious drops of watered wine, or some honey if the gods have truly smiled upon you. This daily ritual isn't merely spiritual maintenance. It's a survival strategy developed over centuries of precarious existence. In a world where random catastrophe can strike anyone at any time, you need all the divine protection you can possibly muster. Today, like every day, you'll face threats that could kill you in 100 different ways. Building collapse, fire, disease, violence, starvation, or simple accident. The lairs might be your only allies in a universe that seems designed to eliminate the poor and powerless. The journey from your fifth-floor cubicula to the street level is a daily traverse through the rigid hierarchy of Roman society, mapped in wood, stone, and mortal danger. Each step down those worn wooden stairs, their surfaces polished smooth by countless desperate feet, takes you through distinct layers of social stratification, each with its own particular hazards and indignities. The fourth floor, where you've spent the night, represents the borderland between precarious survival and absolute destitution. Here, families of artisans, shop clerks, and day laborers crowd into rooms barely large enough for their straw mattresses, sharing walls so thin that every conversation becomes public knowledge. Privacy is a luxury that simply doesn't exist at your level of society. You know the intimate details of your neighbors' marriages, their children's illnesses, their financial struggles, and their desperate attempts to improve their circumstances. As you descend to the third floor in the flickering glow of oil lamps, the accommodations improve slightly, but remain desperately overcrowded. Here might live a successful baker's family, a veteran legionnaire living on his pension, or a freedman who's managed to accumulate enough savings to afford marginally better quarters. But even these relatively privileged residents face the same fundamental dangers: fire, collapse, crime, and disease that threaten everyone who cannot afford the safety of ground floor living. Yet as you make your way down those treacherous stairs, something remarkable becomes apparent. The insula isn't just a building, it's a community bound together by shared desperation and mutual dependence. The residents have developed informal networks of cooperation that mean the difference between survival and death. Mrs. Claudia on the third floor, widowed when her husband died in a construction accident, relies on the teenage son of the cobbler's family to carry water buckets up from the street-level cistern. In return, she mends clothes for his entire family, a skill learned during her childhood that now keeps her from starvation. The baker's apprentice, who lives on the second floor, receives a small discount on his rent by ensuring that everyone in the building gets advance warning when the grain ships are delayed and bread prices will rise. These patron-client relationships, which define every aspect of Roman society, extend even into the cramped quarters of the insulae. The cobbler serves as patronus to several poorer families, offering small loans during emergencies and using his connections to help them find occasional work. In return, his clients provide political support during local elections, offer their labor during busy periods, and maintain the loyalty that Roman social structure demands. Your most immediate need, water, illustrates perfectly how the Romans transformed potentially deadly challenges into opportunities for community cooperation and social networking. There are no taps in your room, no private wells, no modern convenience whatsoever. Every drop of water you'll consume today must be carried up 5 flights of increasingly dangerous stairs from the communal cistern at street level. This might seem like an impossible burden, but the residents of your insula have developed sophisticated systems for sharing this essential task. Families pool resources to hire strong young men who make multiple daily trips, carrying amphora after amphora of precious water to the upper floors. Women too old for other work organize water-carrying schedules, ensuring that elderly residents and new mothers aren't left without access to this basic necessity. The water carriers themselves, usually freedmen or slaves looking to earn extra income, represent one of the countless small industries that spring up wherever human need creates opportunity. They know every family's consumption patterns, creditworthiness, and personal circumstances. They extend credit during hard times, carry messages between floors, and serve as informal news networks that keep the entire community informed about everything from grain prices to political developments. But the daily water journey also serves another crucial purpose. It familiarizes every resident with escape routes that might save their lives if fire strikes. The residents of your insula have developed informal fire safety protocols, born from bitter experience with the disasters that regularly claim entire buildings. The staircase you descend each morning doubles as the primary escape route that everyone must know intimately. Every loose board, every narrow turn, every potential bottleneck that could trap fleeing residents. Children are taught from infancy to navigate these stairs in total darkness, since fires often strike at night when oil lamps are knocked over or cooking fires get out of control. The ground floor residents, who pay premium rent for their proximity to both safety and the street, have developed an informal early warning system. When they detect smoke or flames, they pound on pipes and shout warnings that echo through the building's hollow walls, giving upper floor residents precious extra minutes to escape. In return, the upper floor residents contribute small amounts to a common fund that helps ground floor families replace possessions damaged when they throw their doors open to fleeing neighbors. Stepping from the relative shelter of your insula into the Roman street is like being plunged into a sensory maelstrom that would overwhelm any modern person within seconds. The first assault comes not through your eyes or ears, but through your nose. An olfactory bombardment, so intense it can trigger physical nausea in the unprepared. Ancient Rome assaults your nostrils with a complex bouquet that defies modern comprehension. The base note is human waste, not just from the occasional chamber pot emptied from upper windows, but from the systematic reality that most property owners never bothered connecting their toilets to the famous Roman sewer system. Professional collectors move through the streets, gathering human excrement for fertilizer, their carts adding their own pungent contribution to the urban atmosphere. Layered over this foundation comes the sharp, metallic stench of blood from nearby butcher shops, where animals are slaughtered in the open air, while clouds of flies swarm over discarded offal. The acrid smoke of wood fires mingles with the reek of rotting vegetables from yesterday's unsold produce, while the distinctive odor of urine, used for everything from cleaning clothes to tanning leather, permeates the air around commercial establishments. But perhaps most unsettling to modern sensibilities is the sweet, cloying smell of cremation that drifts from funeral pyres just outside the city walls. The Romans burned their dead in the open air, and on windless days, the scent of burning flesh mingles with the other urban odors to create an olfactory signature that would be immediately recognizable to any ancient city dweller. Yet remarkably, this sensory assault is similarly normal to Roman noses. People rarely complain about odors that would trigger modern health inspectors to evacuate entire city blocks. Instead, the wealthy Romans have developed sophisticated perfume traditions that represent both luxury and practical adaptation to urban realities. Exquisite blends of roses from Paestum in southern Italy, particularly prized for their intense fragrance, are mixed with exotic cinnamon, iris, frankincense, and precious saffron. These aren't just pleasant scents. They're medicinal preparations designed to ward off the diseases that thrive in urban squalor. Glass perfume bottles, made possible by recent innovations in glass-blowing technology, developed in Roman-controlled Jerusalem, have become common enough that archaeologists regularly find them in even modest households. The perfume trade itself represents one of the countless industries that emerge when human necessity meets entrepreneurial opportunity. Perfume merchants develop detailed knowledge of their customers' health conditions, social status, and personal preferences. They extend credit, provide medical advice, and serve as informal marriage brokers by helping young people present themselves attractively. If the smells of Rome are overwhelming, the sounds are absolutely deafening. The morning cacophony begins before dawn and continues until well after sunset, creating an acoustic environment that makes concentrated thought nearly impossible. The bass rhythm comes from wooden wheels grinding against stone pavements as merchants race to deliver goods before wheeled traffic is banned during daylight hours. Iron horseshoes ring against cobblestones while drivers shout instructions to their animals in a dozen different languages. Hammers ring against anvils in countless workshops tucked into ground floor spaces, while the rhythmic thudding of textile workers beating cloth echoes from upper floors. But the human voices create the most complex layer of this acoustic tapestry. Street vendors, hawk their wares in sing-song calls that carry for blocks, each developing distinctive melodies to distinguish their products from competitors. Children shriek with laughter or pain as they play in the narrow spaces between buildings, while their mothers shout warnings, instructions, and gossip from windows and doorways. Your growling stomach and empty water jug force you into the nearest market, a sensory explosion that makes the street seem quiet by comparison. Here, the theater of daily survival plays out in vivid, desperate detail as hundreds of people engage in the complex negotiations that determine who eats and who goes hungry. The Roman markets aren't the orderly affairs of modern commerce, but chaotic melees where survival depends on wit, connections, and ruthless bargaining. Vendors spread their wares on simple wooden tables or woven mats, arranging produce in displays designed to hide spoilage and emphasize freshness. Fresh fruits and vegetables create colorful temptations, oranges and lemons that remain exotic imports from distant provinces, local grapes and figs, onions and garlic that form the foundation of Roman cooking. Butchers hang cuts of meat from iron hooks, the flesh attracting clouds of flies that vendors battle with constant waving of palm fronds. Fishmongers display their catch on beds of wet straw, creating distinctive odors that can be detected from blocks away. The constant buzzing of insects, the dripping of blood and fish scales, and the persistent stench of spoiling food create an atmosphere that would violate every modern health regulation. But within this apparent chaos lies a sophisticated economic system built on personal relationships, credit networks, and mutual dependence. Successful shoppers don't just buy goods. They invest in relationships that might mean the difference between starvation and survival during the next grain shortage. The fishmonger's wife recognizes regular customers and reserves the freshest catches for those who've proven their loyalty over years of consistent purchases. She extends credit during hard times, holds special items for feast days, and provides cooking advice that helps stretch limited resources. In return, her customers provide political support for her husband's bid for membership in the Fishmongers Guild, spread word about the quality of her goods, and maintain the personal loyalty that makes Roman commerce possible. The grain merchant maintains detailed knowledge of his customers' family sizes, financial situations, and consumption patterns. During shortages, which occur regularly when weather disrupts the Egyptian grain fleet, he ensures that his most reliable customers don't starve, sometimes extending credit that won't be repaid for months. His customers, in turn, provide labor during busy periods, offer their homes as temporary warehouses, and serve as informal advertisements for his fair dealing. Your morning meal options illustrate perfectly how Roman survival depends on careful resource management and social connections. If you're fortunate enough to have saved bread from yesterday, itself a significant achievement requiring both planning and luck, you might dip it in watered wine to soften the hardening crust. Olives, cheese, or raisins represent luxury additions that most insula dwellers can afford only occasionally. The wealthy, of course, enjoy elaborate morning feasts featuring fresh meat, fish, fruit sweetened with honey, sugar being unknown in your world, and delicacies imported from across the empire. But as someone living 5 floors above the streets, your choices are constrained by both limited income and the practical impossibility of storing perishable foods in quarters without refrigeration. Yet even this humble meal represents a complex web of relationships and calculations. The bread comes from a baker who extends credit to regular customers, accepting payment when wages arrive rather than demanding immediate settlement. The wine is watered not just for taste, but to make expensive alcohol last longer and reduce the risk of intoxication that could lead to accidents or poor decision-making. Even the simple wooden bowl from which you eat was acquired through barter with a neighbor who needed mending work more than dishware. Walking through the morning streets of 300 CE Rome is like navigating a complex visual language where every detail of appearance, behavior, and movement communicates precise information about social status, wealth, and political connections. This isn't mere fashion. It's a survival skill that can mean the difference between respect and humiliation, opportunity and exclusion, safety and danger. Your own clothing immediately marks you as lower class. A simple, undyed wool tunic that's seen better days, probably patched at the elbows and stained with the honest labor that keeps you alive. The fabric is coarse, the weave visible, the color the natural grayish-brown of undyed wool that screams poverty to every observer. But even this humble garment represents careful planning and resource management. Wool is expensive, and a decent tunic requires months of saving or favorable barter arrangements. The wealthy glide past in pristine togas with purple stripes that indicate membership in the equestrian or senatorial classes. These aren't just clothes, they're wearable declarations of power, requiring teams of skilled slaves to drape properly and maintain. The purple dye comes from murex shells processed in distant Phoenician workshops, making it literally worth more than gold. A single stripe of genuine Tyrian purple represents more wealth than most Romans will see in a lifetime. But clothing is only the beginning of this complex social signaling system. The way people walk, talk, and carry themselves provides equally important information about their place in the rigid hierarchy that governs every aspect of Roman life. The wealthy move with the unhurried confidence of those who never doubt their right to occupy space. They gesture broadly, speak loudly enough for their words to carry, and assume that others will step aside to accommodate their passage. Their slaves clear paths through crowded streets, carry their personal items, and handle the mundane interactions with merchants and service providers. You, by contrast, move with the alert wariness of someone who understands that a single misstep could have devastating consequences. You keep your eyes down in the presence of obvious superiors, step quickly aside when important processions approach, and speak only when spoken to by those above your station. This isn't servility. It's practical intelligence, developed through harsh experience with the consequences of presumption. The economic realities underlying this social theater are brutal and unforgiving. A skilled centurion on the frontier earns about 300 denarii per month, good money that places him among the middle ranks of Roman society. A secretary or lecturer makes only 12 to 15 denarii monthly, barely enough to afford decent housing and adequate food. Your own income, assuming you can find regular work, probably falls somewhere in this lower range. But these raw numbers don't capture the real impact of economic inequality on daily life. A loaf of bread costs 2 asses, a small but significant expense that consumes a meaningful portion of your daily earnings. A cow costs 100 to 200 denarii, representing months of savings even for skilled workers. Your annual rent for that cramped fifth-floor room runs 48 to 288 denarii, depending on the building's condition and your landlord's greed. More importantly, social mobility is extremely limited. If you're born poor, you will almost certainly die poor, despite any amount of hard work or personal virtue. If you were born a slave, you might eventually buy your freedom or receive it as a gift, but you'll never fully escape the stigma of servile origin. The vast majority of the population lives at subsistence level, while a tiny elite controls most wealth and political power. Yet within this seemingly rigid system, Romans have developed sophisticated networks of mutual obligation that provide pathways for advancement and protection against catastrophe. The patron-client relationship, which defines every aspect of Roman society, extends far beyond the formal arrangements between wealthy patrons and their dependent clients. In your world, patronage operates at every level of society. The cobbler in your insula serves as patronus to several poorer families, offering small loans during emergencies and using his connections to help them find occasional work. The baker extends credit to regular customers, accepting payment when wages arrive rather than demanding immediate settlement. Even children develop informal patronage relationships, trading favors and protection that mirror the adult system. These relationships aren't just about economics. They're about creating social insurance networks that help people survive the countless crises that threaten daily existence. When illness strikes and you can't work, your patron might provide food for your family. When fire destroys your possessions, your clients might contribute labor to help you rebuild. When legal troubles threaten, your network of relationships might provide witnesses, character references, or financial support. Slavery permeates every aspect of Roman life in ways that make it impossible to ignore or avoid. Wealthy households own hundreds or even thousands of slaves who perform every conceivable task: cooking, cleaning, tutoring children, managing businesses, and providing entertainment. Some of these slaves are clearly better fed and dressed than you are. Skilled tutors, secretaries, or household managers who've earned their master's favor through competence and loyalty. But the reality of slavery extends far beyond the obvious examples of household servants and agricultural laborers. Slaves work in workshops, producing goods you use daily, serve in the shops where you buy food, and provide the skilled labor that keeps the city functioning. They're teachers, doctors, artists, and administrators whose talents are owned by others, but whose skills are essential to Roman civilization. The psychology of slavery creates complex social dynamics that affect even free Romans of your class. You're constantly aware that your freedom, however limited, distinguishes you from those who have no legal rights whatsoever. Yet you also recognize that many slaves enjoy greater security, better housing, and more regular meals than you do. This awareness creates both gratitude for your free status and anxiety about your precarious position just above the bottom of the social hierarchy. Your workday in 300 CE follows patterns established by the practical necessities of pre-industrial life. Like most Romans, you begin working at dawn and finish around noon. A 6-hour schedule designed to maximize productivity during daylight hours, when artificial lighting is expensive and dangerous. Oil lamps are costly, produce minimal illumination, and pose constant fire hazards in buildings constructed largely of wood. But these 6 hours represent intense, unrelenting labor under conditions that would shock modern workers. There are no safety regulations, no workers' compensation, no sick leave or vacation time. If you're injured, you lose income immediately and permanently, unless you can find alternative ways to earn money. If you become ill, you either work through the sickness or risk starvation. If you're fortunate enough to have steady employment, you might work in one of the countless workshops that crowd the ground floors of Insulae throughout the city. These small businesses, metalworking shops, pottery studios, textile operations, and food preparation facilities represent the economic engine that keeps Rome functioning. The Roman workshop is a fascinating blend of sophisticated technique and primitive conditions. Metalworkers have mastered techniques for producing tools, weapons, and decorative objects that won't be matched for centuries. Yet they work in poorly ventilated spaces filled with toxic fumes. Potters create vessels of remarkable beauty and functionality, but they labor over fires that fill their lungs with smoke and coat their skin with clay dust. The workshop also serves as an informal social center where news, gossip, and practical information circulate throughout the community. Apprentices carry messages between businesses. Customers discuss political developments while waiting for their orders. And the workshop master serves as an informal bank, extending credit and storing valuables for trusted clients. One of the most remarkable aspects of Roman working life is the development of collegia, professional associations that combine economic cooperation with social insurance and religious observance. These guilds represent one of humanity's earliest experiments in collective bargaining and mutual aid. Your membership in the appropriate guild, assuming you can afford the fees and meet the entry requirements, provides access to a sophisticated support network. The guild maintains common funds that provide assistance during illness or injury, helps widows and orphans of deceased members, and offers loans for equipment or business expansion. But guild membership also requires significant obligations. You must attend regular meetings, contribute to common funds, participate in religious ceremonies honoring the guild's patron deity, and support fellow members during their crises. The guild regulates prices, quality standards, and working conditions, but it also restricts competition and controls access to markets. Alongside the official economy, represented by guilds and licensed workshops, operates a vast underground network of informal labor and black market trade. Clandestine workers, both male and female, operate from garret shops and hidden rooms, producing goods that compete with guild-sanctioned products. This shadow economy provides crucial opportunities for those excluded from official trade networks. Women, who are largely barred from guild membership, find ways to practice crafts and earn income through informal arrangements. Slaves and freedmen use their skills to generate money that might eventually purchase freedom or better living conditions. The guild masters themselves often participate in this illegal economy, hiring non-guild workers for specific tasks and paying below standard wages. Hair weavers arrange intricate patterns for wig makers. Seamstresses work in hidden rooms producing clothing that undercuts official prices. And metal workers operate small forges in cellars and attics. When your morning's work ends around noon, you enter a world of public leisure that serves crucial social and political functions. Roman civilization recognizes that people who work hard need opportunities for recreation and social interaction. But these activities are never purely personal. They're part of the complex web of relationships that holds society together. The public baths represent perhaps the most important institution in Roman social life. Here, people from different social classes mix in ways that would be impossible elsewhere, creating opportunities for networking, gossip exchange, and informal business negotiations. The baths also provide the only reliable access to warm water and soap for most Romans, making them essential for basic hygiene. But the bathing experience itself illustrates the harsh realities of urban life. The pools are often grimy affairs where 8 to 12 people share water that's been used by countless bodies before theirs. Instead of soap, Romans coat themselves with olive oil and scrape it off with bronze tools called strigils, creating a mixture of oil and dead skin that gets flung against walls or dumped on floors. The result is hardly what modern people would consider hygienic. The famous Roman entertainment, gladiatorial games, chariot races, and theatrical performances serves multiple functions beyond mere diversion. These spectacles reinforce social hierarchies by demonstrating the power of those who sponsor them, provide outlets for popular frustrations that might otherwise turn to political rebellion, and create shared experiences that bind the urban population together. Gladiatorial games, though, beginning their slow decline as Christianity gains influence, remain hugely popular in 300 CE. These contests aren't just mindless violence. They're carefully choreographed demonstrations of courage, skill, and honor that reflect Roman values. The spectators don't just watch passively. They participate in complex rituals of approval and disapproval that influence the outcomes. Chariot races at the Circus Maximus draw crowds of up to 250,000 people, creating levels of mass excitement that are difficult to imagine. The racing factions, blues, greens, reds, and whites, command loyalties that transcend social class and create temporary communities among people who would otherwise have little in common. Riots between rival factions are common, and political tensions often explode into street fighting that can shut down entire neighborhoods. Living in 300 CE means facing a level of mortality that modern people can barely comprehend. Approximately 25% of babies don't survive their first year, and up to half of all children die before reaching age 10. This isn't just statistics. It means that every family you meet has buried multiple children. And emotional attachment to the very young is necessarily limited by the probability of loss. For adults, the average life expectancy hovers around 25 to 30 years, though this figure is skewed by massive infant mortality. If you survive childhood, you might live into your 50s or 60s, but you'll be considered elderly by age 40 and ancient by 50. Your body will show the wear of hard physical labor, poor nutrition, and constant exposure to disease and injury. The demographic reality shapes every aspect of Roman family structure and social organization. Marriages typically occur early. Girls at 12 to 14 years old, boys in their mid-20s, with the explicit goal of producing as many children as possible before death intervenes. The paterfamilias holds absolute legal power over his household precisely because someone must make quick decisions when family members fall ill or die unexpectedly. When illness strikes, and it will frequently, your medical options represent a fascinating blend of genuine insight and dangerous ignorance. Roman physicians have made significant advances in anatomy and surgical techniques, particularly army doctors who deal with battle wounds and trauma injuries. They can set broken bones, suture wounds, and perform certain types of surgery with remarkable skill. But Roman medicine also relies heavily on treatments that range from useless to actively harmful. Bloodletting is considered a cure for numerous conditions, based on the theory that illness results from imbalanced bodily humors. Purging through induced vomiting or diarrhea is prescribed for everything from headaches to serious infections. Many remedies contain substances that modern medicine recognizes as toxic. Perhaps most significantly, Roman medicine operates without any understanding of infectious disease. Physicians don't recognize that illnesses can spread from person to person through contaminated water, infected wounds, or respiratory droplets. This ignorance leads to medical practices that actually accelerate the spread of disease rather than preventing it. Personal hygiene presents daily challenges that require constant attention and creativity. Most Romans visit public baths regularly, but these facilities often become centers for disease transmission rather than cleanliness. The warm, moist environment provides ideal conditions for bacterial growth, while the shared bathing water spreads infections among users. Without modern soap, Romans use olive oil as a cleanser, coating their skin and then scraping it off with bronze strigils. This process removes some dirt and dead skin, but it also creates waste products that accumulate in the bathhouses and contribute to unsanitary conditions. The oil and skin mixture gets flung against walls, dumped on floors, or simply left floating in the bathing pools. Dental care is virtually non-existent, and tooth pain is simply something Romans endure. Bad breath is so common that it's rarely remarked upon, though the wealthy use primitive mouthwashes made from herbs and wine. Primitive deodorants exist, including preparations made by boiling plant roots in wine to induce urination, which was believed to flush out body odor from the inside. Disease affects different social classes in dramatically different ways, creating yet another layer of inequality in Roman society. The wealthy can afford private physicians, imported medicines, and comfortable quarters for recovery. They eat varied diets that provide better nutrition, live in less crowded conditions that reduce disease transmission, and have access to cleaner water sources. The poor, by contrast, crowd together in conditions that facilitate the rapid spread of infectious diseases. Malnutrition weakens their immune systems, making them more susceptible to illness and less able to recover. When they fall sick, they typically continue working as long as possible, since lost wages can mean starvation for their families. Seasonal disease patterns reveal the harsh realities of urban life. Mortality reaches peaks from late summer to mid-autumn, suggesting that many Romans die from intestinal infections and malaria during the periods when these diseases are most prevalent. The timing affects the poor much more severely than the wealthy, who can afford better food preservation and have access to higher quality medical care. Yet Romans have developed remarkable strategies for coping with the constant threat of illness and death. Extended family networks provide care for sick relatives, pooling resources to purchase medicine or hire physicians. Neighbors and insulae create informal support systems, checking on elderly residents and helping families cope with medical emergencies. Religious observances serve important psychological functions, providing communities with shared rituals for processing grief and maintaining hope. Household shrines aren't just spiritual focal points. They're places where families gather to pray for healing and express gratitude for recovery. Public festivals create opportunities for collective celebration that helps communities cope with the stress of constant mortality. The guild system provides formalized support for illness and injury. Guild members contribute to common funds that provide assistance during medical crises, ensuring that skilled workers don't lose their livelihoods permanently due to temporary incapacity. These early insurance systems represent some of humanity's first attempts at collective risk management. Roman childhood in 300 CE is a journey through a minefield of biological and social dangers that claim roughly half of all children before they reach adulthood. Yet those who survive develop remarkable resilience, practical skills, and social intelligence that enable them to thrive in one of history's most complex civilizations. Children in your world aren't miniature adults, but they're certainly not sheltered innocents either. From early childhood, they're exposed to the full spectrum of human experience: birth, death, violence, sexuality, and the harsh realities of social inequality. This exposure isn't considered harmful. It's viewed as essential preparation for adult responsibilities. Roman children have access to toys and games that would be familiar to modern kids, though made from different materials and serving additional educational purposes. They play with balls made from inflated animal bladders, hoops made from wood or metal, and dolls carved from wood or clay. Boys play with wooden swords and hobby horses, practicing the military skills they'll need as adults. Girls play house and tend to dolls, learning the domestic management skills their society expects. But Roman childhood games serve purposes far beyond simple entertainment. They're sophisticated educational tools designed to prepare children for their adult roles while teaching crucial survival skills. The military games that boys play aren't just fun. They're training for the army service that most will eventually perform. Girls' games with dolls and miniature household items teach practical skills like cooking, cleaning, and textile production that they'll need to manage their own households. But these games also teach more subtle lessons about social relationships, economic management, and the complex negotiations that define Roman family life. Board games like Tally, similar to dice, Calculi, resembling Connect 4, and primitive versions of chess and backgammon teach mathematical concepts, strategic thinking, and probability assessment. These aren't just intellectual exercises. They're preparation for the complex financial and social calculations that define adult Roman life. Formal education in 300 CE reflects and reinforces the rigid social stratification that defines Roman society. Literacy rates rarely exceed 10 to 20% of the population and may average as low as 5% in Western provinces. This isn't due to lack of intelligence or interest. It's the result of an economic system that makes education accessible primarily to wealthy families. Children who do attend school face challenges that make learning much more difficult than in the modern world. Texts consist of continuous strings of letters, without spaces between words, punctuation, or distinction between upper and lowercase letters. Students must work out word boundaries and meaning entirely for themselves, making reading fluency a process that takes years to develop. The physical conditions of Roman schools would horrify modern parents. Students sit on hard benches, in poorly lit rooms, writing on wax tablets with metal styluses that require considerable pressure to make marks. Discipline is harsh, with corporal punishment considered normal and necessary for effective learning. But formal schooling represents only one pathway to education in Roman society. Most Romans learn essential skills through apprenticeships, family instruction, and guild training programs that provide practical education directly relevant to their adult work. Apprenticeships begin early, often around age 12 to 14, and last for 5 to 9 years. During this period, young people live with master craftsmen who provide food, clothing, shelter, and training in exchange for unpaid labor. The relationship involves much more than technical instruction. Apprentices learn business practices, social connections, and the complex relationships that define their trades. Guild training programs represent some of the most sophisticated educational institutions in the ancient world. They combine technical instruction with moral education, religious observance, and social networking that prepare young people for full participation in their communities. Guild masters take personal responsibility for their apprentices' development, often maintaining lifelong relationships that provide ongoing support and guidance. Roman children aren't economic burdens. They're essential contributors to family survival from early ages. Young children perform simple tasks like carrying messages, tending animals, and helping with food preparation. Older children take on more complex responsibilities, often generating significant income through their labor. This economic integration serves important educational functions. Children learn practical skills by participating in real work rather than artificial exercises. They develop understanding of family finances, market dynamics, and social relationships through direct participation rather than abstract instruction. Most importantly, they learn that their personal welfare is directly connected to their family's economic success. The transition from childhood to adulthood occurs much earlier than in modern societies. Girls are considered ready for marriage at 12 to 14 years old, while boys typically assume adult responsibilities around 16 to 18. This early transition isn't just about physical maturity. It reflects the reality that life expectancy requires people to become productive adults quickly. or risk never reaching their full potential. Religious observances mark the crucial transitions from childhood to adulthood, providing communities with shared rituals that recognize and celebrate these important changes. When girls reach marriageable age, they offer their childhood dolls to household gods in ceremonies that formally acknowledge their new status. Boys undergo rituals that recognize their readiness for military service and civic responsibility. These ceremonies aren't just symbolic, they have real legal and social consequences. Once children undergo these transition rituals, they're held to adult standards of behavior and responsibility. They can enter into contracts, own property, and face adult punishments for violations of law or social norms. Your spiritual life in 300 CE begins each morning at the Lararium, but it extends far beyond personal devotion to encompass a complex system of divine relationships that permeate every aspect of daily existence. The household gods aren't distant theological concepts. They're intimate family members who require daily attention, regular offerings, and careful maintenance of proper relationships. The Lares, who protect your cramped insula apartment, have specific personalities, preferences, and areas of influence. Your household Lar watches over the building's physical structure, potentially preventing the fires and collapses that claim lives regularly. The Penates guard your family's food stores and health, ensuring that your meager resources last as long as possible. But these protective relationships require constant attention and negotiation. Each morning's offerings represent installment payments on a spiritual insurance policy. When you place breadcrumbs or wine drops on your shrine, you're not just expressing gratitude, you're maintaining contractual relationships that might save your life. The year 300 CE places you at one of the most pivotal moments in religious history. Christianity has grown from a persecuted sect to comprise roughly 10% of the Roman population. But this dramatic expansion has also triggered backlash from traditional religious authorities. Emperor Diocletian will launch his great persecution in just 3 years, making this a period of extraordinary religious tension and opportunity. Most Romans still practice traditional polytheism, maintaining elaborate household shrines and participating in public ceremonies that honor gods like Jupiter, Mars, and the deified emperors. These aren't just spiritual observances. They're expressions of political loyalty and social conformity that mark participants as reliable members of the community. Mystery religions like Mithraism compete for followers in Rome's cosmopolitan atmosphere. These cults promise personal salvation and direct relationships with divine powers, offering alternatives to both traditional Roman polytheism and emerging Christianity. Soldiers particularly favor Mithraism, which emphasizes courage, loyalty, and brotherhood in ways that resonate with military values. Christian communities in 300 CE operate sophisticated underground networks that provide mutual support, religious instruction, and preparation for potential persecution. These early churches function much like Roman collegia, combining religious observance with practical assistance and social networking. Christian mutual aid systems often surpass those of traditional Roman institutions. Church communities pool resources to support widows, orphans, and sick members, creating social insurance networks that help believers survive the economic and medical crises that regularly threaten urban life. During plagues and famines, Christian communities often provide assistance to non-believers as well, building goodwill and demonstrating their values through actions. The Christian emphasis on caring for the poor and outcast attracts followers from the lowest levels of Roman society. Slaves, freedmen, and destitute workers find in Christian communities acceptance and support that's unavailable elsewhere. This social base gives Christianity remarkable resilience. Persecution may eliminate wealthy patrons and prominent leaders, but the poor believers who form the movement's foundation are harder to identify and suppress. But religious life in 300 CE isn't characterized by sharp divisions between competing faiths. Most Romans practice religious syncretism, incorporating elements from multiple traditions to create personalized spiritual systems that address their specific needs and circumstances. A typical Roman household might maintain traditional lares and penates, while also honoring a mystery cult deity and showing respect for Christian neighbors. Religious boundaries are often less important than practical considerations. People pray to whatever gods seem most likely to provide the specific assistance they need. This religious flexibility creates opportunities for gradual conversion and cross-cultural exchange. Christian ideas about divine mercy, personal salvation, and care for the poor gradually influence traditional Roman religious practices. Meanwhile, Christian communities adopt organizational structures, artistic styles, and ceremonial elements from the broader Roman culture. Religious festivals serve crucial functions in maintaining community cohesion and providing psychological relief from the stresses of daily survival. Major celebrations like Saturnalia temporarily overturn social hierarchies, allowing slaves to give orders to masters and poor people to mock the wealthy. These festivals aren't just parties. They're sophisticated social institutions that provide safe outlets for tensions that might otherwise explode into violence. By allowing controlled expressions of frustration and resentment, religious celebrations help maintain social stability while giving everyone, regardless of status, opportunities for joy and community connection. Religious processions create shared experiences that bind diverse urban populations together. When the entire neighborhood participates in honoring a local deity, social differences temporarily disappear as everyone contributes to a common purpose. These events also provide opportunities for political expression, social networking, and economic activity that extend far beyond their religious significance. Religious beliefs provide essential resources for coping with the constant presence of death that defines life in 300 CE. Traditional Roman practices emphasize honoring ancestors and maintaining family continuity across generations. Household shrines often include images or symbols representing deceased family members who continue to protect and guide the living. Christian beliefs about eternal life and divine judgment offer alternative ways of understanding mortality and suffering. The promise of resurrection provides hope that current hardships are temporary, while the emphasis on divine justice suggests that the inequalities of earthly life will be corrected in the afterlife. These competing religious frameworks create rich opportunities for theological discussion and personal spiritual development. People facing illness, poverty, or loss can draw on multiple traditions to find meaning and comfort in their circumstances. The official Roman economy in 300 CE operates through a sophisticated network of guilds, regulations, and market controls that attempt to balance economic efficiency with social stability. Emperor Diocletian's recent edict on maximum prices represents the empire's most ambitious attempt to control inflation through direct government intervention, though the policy is already showing signs of failure. Guild membership provides access to regulated markets, but it also imposes significant restrictions on individual economic freedom. Members must follow established quality standards, charge agreed-upon prices, and respect territorial boundaries that limit competition. These regulations protect guild members from unfair competition, but they also prevent innovation and entrepreneurship that might improve efficiency or reduce costs. The guild system works reasonably well for established craftsmen with secure market positions, but it creates barriers for newcomers trying to enter trades. Apprenticeships are expensive, often requiring families to pay significant fees for their children to receive training. Master craftsmen prefer to train relatives or connections rather than the most talented candidates, perpetuating family advantages across generations. Alongside the official guild-regulated economy, operates a vast underground network of informal labor and black market trade. This shadow economy provides crucial opportunities for those excluded from official trade networks: women, slaves, foreign men, and the desperately poor. Clandestine workers operate from hidden workshops in attics, cellars, and remote corners of buildings. They produce goods that compete directly with guild-sanctioned products, often at lower prices due to reduced overhead costs and willingness to work for substandard wages. Guild masters themselves often participate in this illegal economy, hiring non-guild workers for specific tasks, while publicly maintaining their commitment to guild regulations. Women find particular opportunities in the underground economy. Officially barred from most guild membership, they develop informal networks for practicing crafts and selling products. Seamstresses work in garret shops, producing clothing that undercuts official prices. Tresuses, hair weavers, arrange intricate patterns for wig makers, performing the most labor-intensive aspects of the craft outside masters' shops. The underground economy drives innovation in ways that the regulated guild system cannot. Clandestine workers constantly develop new techniques, tools, and products to gain competitive advantages over official producers. They experiment with materials, processes, and designs that established craftsmen avoid due to guild restrictions or conservative traditions. These innovations often eventually make their way into the official economy as guild masters adopt successful techniques developed by illegal workers. The process creates a dynamic relationship between formal and informal economic sectors, with underground innovation driving overall technological progress. Resource scarcity in the shadow economy also encourages creative problem-solving. Underground workers must make do with discounted materials, repurposed tools, and improvised workshop spaces. These constraints force them to develop efficient techniques and discover new applications for common materials. Roman society in 300 CE operates sophisticated credit systems that extend far beyond formal banking institutions. Personal relationships serve as collateral for most loans, creating complex webs of mutual obligation that bind communities together while enabling economic activity. Neighborhood merchants extend credit to regular customers, accepting payment when wages arrive, rather than demanding immediate settlement. These informal lending arrangements enable poor families to survive temporary income interruptions while providing merchants with customer loyalty and regular business. The relationships involve much more than simple financial transactions. They create ongoing social bonds that include information sharing, mutual support during crises, and political cooperation. Professional moneylenders operate throughout Roman cities, providing financial services to people excluded from elite banking networks. These lenders develop detailed knowledge of their clients' income patterns, family situations, and creditworthiness. They often combine lending with other services like safe storage of valuables, currency exchange, and investment advice. Rome's position as the center of a vast empire creates opportunities for long-distance trade that bring exotic goods and new ideas into daily life. The great trade routes, including the famous Silk Road connecting China to the Mediterranean, carry much more than material goods. They're conduits for technological innovation, religious ideas, artistic styles, and cultural practices that gradually transform Roman civilization. Local merchants specialize in importing specific types of goods from distant provinces. Spice dealers maintain connections with suppliers in India and Southeast Asia, while silk merchants work with Chinese producers through Parthian intermediaries. These trade relationships require sophisticated understanding of currency exchange, seasonal shipping patterns, and political conditions throughout the empire. The cultural exchanges facilitated by trade networks profoundly influence daily life in ways that extend far beyond simple consumption. New cooking techniques arrive with imported spices. Architectural innovations spread through construction materials trade, and artistic styles evolve through exposure to foreign influences. Perhaps most remarkably, Roman economic networks demonstrate extraordinary resilience and adaptability in the face of constant challenges. Political instability, military conflicts, natural disasters, and epidemic diseases regularly disrupt normal economic activity. Yet the system repeatedly recovers and continues functioning. This resilience stems from the redundancy built into Roman economic relationships. Multiple overlapping networks provide alternative pathways when primary connections fail. Local production capabilities can substitute for imports when trade routes are disrupted. Credit relationships provide temporary support during economic downturns. The combination of formal guild structures and informal underground networks creates an economic system that's both stable and flexible. Official regulations provide predictability and quality assurance, while underground innovation drives adaptation and improvement. The tension between these systems generates creative energy that fuels ongoing economic development. When your morning's work ends around noon, you enter a distinctly Roman innovation, the concept of scheduled leisure time as a civic right and social necessity. This isn't merely personal relaxation. It's a sophisticated system of public entertainment designed to maintain social cohesion, political stability, and cultural identity across the diverse populations of the empire. The Roman approach to leisure reflects deep understanding of urban psychology. People who work hard under difficult conditions need outlets for stress, opportunities for social interaction, and shared experiences that bind communities together. The afternoon entertainment programs serve all these functions, while also providing political authorities with tools for managing public opinion and potential unrest. Gladiatorial games, though, beginning their slow decline as Christianity gains influence, remain hugely popular in 300 CE and represent far more than mindless violence. These carefully choreographed spectacles demonstrate Roman values of courage, honor, and discipline, while providing audiences with shared emotional experiences that transcend social boundaries. The arena serves as a theater where abstract concepts like justice, fate, and divine intervention play out in vivid, immediate drama. When a skilled gladiator defeats an opponent through superior technique and courage, spectators witness the triumph of virtue over chance. When an underdog prevails against overwhelming odds, audiences experience the possibility that fortune might favor the deserving rather than the powerful. But gladiatorial games also reinforce social hierarchies in subtle ways. The seating arrangements mirror Roman class structure, with senators in prime locations and slaves relegated to upper tiers if admitted at all. The decision-making process for defeated gladiators, thumbs up or down, gives audiences symbolic participation in life and death choices, normally reserved for political authorities. Chariot races at the Circus Maximus create an entirely different kind of entertainment experience, one that temporarily erases social distinctions and creates genuine mass democracy. With seating for up to 250,000 people, the circus brings together Romans from every social level in shared support for racing factions that command loyalties more intense than modern sports teams can imagine. The racing factions, blues, greens, reds, and whites, serve as surrogate political parties where people can express preferences and allegiances safely. A slave can cheer as loudly as a senator for his faction, and their voices carry equal weight in the roar that influences race outcomes. Riots between rival factions are common and can shut down entire neighborhoods, but they also provide outlets for tensions that might otherwise explode into more dangerous political violence. The betting associated with chariot racing creates its own complex economic networks. Professional gamblers develop sophisticated systems for analyzing horse bloodlines, driver skills, and track conditions. These gambling networks extend throughout Roman society, providing income opportunities for those skilled at probability assessment while creating social connections across class boundaries. Roman storytelling traditions represent perhaps the most democratic aspect of cultural life, accessible to everyone regardless of social status, wealth, or education. Professional storytellers hire themselves out for dinner parties and special events, but the oral tradition extends far beyond formal performances to encompass the daily exchanges of news, gossip, and entertainment that bind communities together. The content of Roman storytelling reflects the full spectrum of human experience. Adventure tales from distant provinces, love stories involving people from different social classes, religious narratives that explain divine intervention in daily life, and practical wisdom disguised as entertainment. These stories serve educational functions, transmitting cultural values and practical knowledge in memorable forms that illiterate audiences can absorb and retransmit. Storytelling also provides opportunities for subtle social criticism and political commentary that would be dangerous in other contexts. Stories about wise servants who outwit foolish masters, poor people who triumph through virtue over wealthy villains, and divine justice that corrects earthly inequalities allow audiences to explore alternative social arrangements without directly challenging established authorities. But perhaps the most pervasive form of Roman entertainment occurs in the daily theatrical performances that accompany routine activities like shopping, working, and socializing. Market transactions become elaborate negotiations involving humor, insults, compliments, and dramatic gestures that entertain bystanders while serving practical purposes. Street vendors develop performance skills that rival professional entertainers, using songs, jokes, and storytelling to attract customers and differentiate their products from competitors. The morning market visit becomes an entertainment experience where shoppers enjoy verbal sparring matches, witness dramatic negotiations, and participate in community theater that makes routine tasks engaging. Workshop activities also involve performance elements that transform mundane labor into shared entertainment. Craftsmen tell stories while they work. Apprentices sing songs that help coordinate group activities, and customers participate in ongoing narratives about local events and personalities. These informal performance traditions create social bonds that make work environments more pleasant while transmitting cultural knowledge and values. Roman games serve crucial educational functions that extend far beyond simple entertainment. Board games like calculi, similar to Connect 4, tally, resembling dice, and primitive versions of chess teach mathematical concepts, strategic thinking, and probability assessment that have direct applications to daily life. These games also provide opportunities for social interaction across class boundaries. A wealthy merchant and a poor carpenter can compete as equals in a game of duodecim scripta, similar to backgammon, creating temporary relationships based on skill rather than social status. Children learn adult games by watching and gradually participating, receiving informal education in mathematics, strategy, and social interaction. The gambling associated with many Roman games creates complex social dynamics. Professional gamblers develop reputations based on their skills and honesty, creating informal career paths for those with mathematical talents. But gambling also provides ordinary people with opportunities to win significant sums that could change their life circumstances, making games vehicles for social mobility as well as entertainment. Religious festivals combine entertainment with spiritual observance in ways that create the year's most significant community celebrations. During major festivals like Saturnalia, normal social rules are temporarily suspended, allowing slaves to give orders to masters and poor people to mock the wealthy without consequences. These festival entertainments serve essential psychological functions, providing safe outlets for social tensions while reinforcing community bonds. The temporary reversal of hierarchies reminds everyone that current social arrangements aren't permanent or divinely ordained, while the return to normal relationships afterward reinforces the practical necessity of established structures. Festival entertainment also provides opportunities for artistic expression and cultural innovation. Musicians, dancers, and storytellers experiment with new forms and styles during festivals, creating cultural developments that gradually influence daily life throughout the year. Religious celebrations become laboratories for artistic experimentation and cultural change. The Roman Collegium system represents one of humanity's most sophisticated early experiments in voluntary association and mutual aid. While ostensibly organized around professional interests, these associations function as comprehensive social insurance networks that address every aspect of members' welfare: economic, medical, legal, social, and spiritual. Your membership in the appropriate collegium, assuming you can afford the fees and meet entry requirements, provides access to support systems that extend far beyond simple professional cooperation. The association maintains common funds that provide assistance during illness or injury, helps widows and orphans of deceased members, offers loans for equipment or business expansion, and provides legal representation when members face accusations or disputes. But collegia membership also requires significant obligations that shape your daily routine and social relationships. You must attend regular meetings that combine business discussions with religious observances, contribute to common funds even when your own resources are strained, participate in funeral processions for deceased members, and support fellow members during their personal and professional crises. Beyond formal associations, Roman urban life generates countless informal networks of mutual support that help people survive the daily crises that threaten survival. These neighborhood relationships often prove more reliable than official institutions during emergencies, providing immediate assistance without bureaucratic delays or eligibility requirements. The residents of your insula have developed sophisticated systems for sharing resources and distributing risks. Water carrying duties are organized collectively, with stronger residents taking responsibility for serving elderly neighbors and new mothers. Childcare responsibilities are shared among families, allowing parents to work while ensuring that children receive adequate supervision. Information networks operate continuously throughout these neighborhood communities, transmitting news about employment opportunities, price changes, political developments, and potential dangers. These informal communication systems often provide more reliable and timely information than official sources, helping families make decisions about everything from shopping patterns to residential arrangements. The patron-client relationship, which permeates every level of Roman society, functions as a personalized social insurance system that provides protection against the numerous risks that threaten daily existence. These relationships aren't just about economic support. They create comprehensive frameworks for mutual obligation that address legal, social, medical, and spiritual needs. Your relationship with a patron provides access to legal representation when disputes arise, medical care when illness strikes, financial assistance during temporary crises, and social connections that might provide employment opportunities. In return, you provide political support, personal services, social prestige, and loyalty that enhances your patron's reputation and influence. These patron-client networks create complex webs of mutual obligation that can extend across multiple generations. Children inherit their parents' patron-client relationships, while also developing their own connections through marriage, employment, and personal achievement. The resulting networks provide stability and continuity that help families survive the political and economic instability that regularly threatens the empire. Religious communities, whether traditional Roman polytheist associations, mystery cult brotherhoods, or emerging Christian congregations, provide essential social support networks that often surpass the assistance available through secular institutions. These communities combine spiritual fellowship with practical mutual aid in ways that address both material and psychological needs. Christian communities in 300 CE demonstrate particular sophistication in organizing mutual aid systems. Church members pool resources to support widows, orphans, and sick believers, creating social insurance networks that help Christians survive economic and medical crises. During plagues and famines, Christian communities often extend assistance to non-believers as well, building goodwill and demonstrating their values through practical action. Traditional Roman religious associations also provide substantial support for their members. Temple communities maintain funds for assisting devotees during emergencies, organize collective religious observances that strengthen community bonds, and provide social networks that help members find employment, marriage partners, and business opportunities. Despite their limited official roles in Roman society, women create and maintain informal networks that exercise considerable influence over daily life. These female-centered networks operate through kinship relationships, neighborhood connections, and shared economic activities that give women substantial behind-the-scenes power. Women's networks specialize in information gathering and transmission, creating communication systems that keep families informed about everything from political developments to marriage prospects. They coordinate mutual assistance during childbirth, illness, and family crises, providing services that official institutions cannot or will not offer. The informal economy provides particular opportunities for women to develop economic networks that operate independently of male-dominated official structures. Female artisans, traders, and service providers create their own credit systems, supply chains, and customer relationships that generate income while building social connections. The true test of Roman community networks comes during the frequent crises that threaten urban populations: fires, building collapses, disease outbreaks, food shortages, and political violence. During these emergencies, formal institutions often prove inadequate, leaving communities dependent on informal support systems for survival. Fire response illustrates how community networks function during crises. When buildings catch fire, neighborhood residents organize bucket brigades, evacuate endangered families, and provide temporary shelter for those who lose their homes. These emergency responses rely on pre-existing relationships and mutual obligations rather than formal emergency services. Disease outbreaks reveal similar patterns of community self-reliance. When plague strikes, neighborhood networks provide nursing care for the sick, distribute food to quarantined families, and arrange burial services for the dead. Religious communities often take leadership roles during medical crises, providing both practical assistance and spiritual comfort. Roman communities developed sophisticated systems for economic cooperation that help members survive the frequent income disruptions and resource shortages that characterize urban life. These arrangements range from simple resource sharing to complex financial partnerships that enable collective investment and risk management. Neighborhood workshops often operate as cooperative enterprises, where multiple families pool labor, tools, and materials to produce goods more efficiently than individual artisans could manage. These cooperatives share profits according to contribution levels, while providing each family with more stable income than independent work would generate. Food purchasing cooperatives allow families to buy staples in bulk at wholesale prices, reducing individual costs while ensuring more reliable access to essential goods. These arrangements require sophisticated coordination and trust, but they provide substantial benefits for participating families. Perhaps most importantly, Roman community networks serve as the primary mechanism for transmitting cultural knowledge, values, and practices across generations. These informal educational systems often prove more effective than formal schooling in preparing young people for adult responsibilities. Storytelling traditions carry practical wisdom disguised as entertainment, teaching children everything from moral values to survival skills through memorable narratives. Neighborhood elders share knowledge about herbal medicine, weather prediction, and economic strategies that help families thrive. Religious traditions transmitted through community networks provide frameworks for understanding and coping with life's challenges. These spiritual resources help individuals find meaning in suffering, maintain hope during difficult periods, and develop the resilience necessary for survival in harsh conditions. As evening shadows lengthen across the Roman streets and oil lamps begin to flicker in windows throughout the city, your world undergoes a dramatic transformation that would be difficult for modern people to comprehend. The bustling, chaotic energy of daytime commerce gives way to something far more sinister and dangerous, a nocturnal landscape where different rules apply and different kinds of people emerge from the shadows. Without electric lighting, Roman nights are truly dark in ways that modern urban dwellers have never experienced. The oil lamps that provide illumination are expensive to maintain and dangerous to use, creating pools of flickering light separated by vast expanses of impenetrable darkness. These conditions make travel treacherous and crime easy, transforming familiar daytime streets into alien territory. The night shift of Roman urban life includes people and activities that operate outside normal social boundaries. Professional entertainers, prostitutes, thieves, and various other marginal figures emerge when respectable citizens retreat to their homes. Night workers develop their own social networks, economic systems, and survival strategies that parallel but rarely intersect with daytime society. Sleep in your fifth-floor cubicula is never peaceful or restorative. The sounds of the city never truly fade. late-night carts delivering goods to avoid daytime traffic restrictions, drunken revelers returning from taverns, fights and domestic disputes echoing through thin walls, the constant barking of dogs, and the ever-present scurrying of rats. The building itself contributes to the nocturnal symphony of urban discomfort. Every breeze sets the wooden structure creaking and groaning, like a ship in rough seas. The floors above and below transmit every footstep, every conversation, every intimate human sound through walls and floorboards that provide no acoustic insulation. Your neighbors' lives become unwilling elements of your own nightly experience. You know the sounds of every family's arguments, lovemaking, sick children, and financial anxieties. Privacy, in any modern sense, simply doesn't exist at your social level. Everyone's personal business becomes community knowledge, whether they want it or not. But as dawn approaches and the first merchants begin their pre-sunrise preparations, the city gradually transforms back into its daytime character. The sounds of legitimate commerce slowly overwhelm the nocturnal activities as another day of survival begins. Your morning prayers at the lararium take on new meaning after a night of reminders about mortality and vulnerability. The morning ritual of descent from your fifth-floor room to street level becomes a daily rebirth, leaving the dangerous isolation of nighttime quarters to rejoin the community networks that make survival possible. Each successful night survived represents a small victory against the countless dangers that threaten daily existence. The continuation of daily routines, water collection, market visits, work activities, social interactions, creates patterns of meaning and purpose that transform mere survival into something approaching human dignity. Even under the harshest conditions, Romans found ways to maintain cultural traditions, social relationships, and personal aspirations that make life worth living. Life in 300 CE follows seasonal patterns that connect human activities intimately with natural cycles. Winter brings different challenges than summer. Heating costs compete with food expenses. Daylight hours shrink dramatically, and cold weather makes already difficult living conditions nearly unbearable. But seasons also bring opportunities and celebrations that provide psychological relief from daily hardships. Religious festivals mark the passage of time with community celebrations that temporarily suspend normal social hierarchies and create shared experiences of joy and abundance. These occasions provide goals to anticipate and memories to sustain hope during difficult periods. The agricultural calendar affects urban life through price fluctuations, food availability, and employment opportunities that require families to plan months in advance. Successful survival requires understanding these larger patterns and adjusting personal strategies accordingly. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of life in 300 CE is how people maintain human dignity and create meaning under conditions that challenge anyone's will to live. Despite poverty, disease, violence, and constant uncertainty, Romans develop rich cultural traditions, maintain complex social relationships, and pursue personal goals that extend far beyond mere survival. Storytelling traditions preserve and transmit wisdom across generations, creating cultural continuity that connects individuals to larger patterns of meaning. Religious observances provide frameworks for understanding suffering and maintaining hope in the face of seemingly impossible circumstances. Community networks create bonds of mutual support that help people survive individual crises while contributing to collective welfare. The artistic achievements of Roman civilization, architecture, literature, sculpture, and engineering emerge from communities of people facing the same daily struggles that define your own existence. This suggests that human creativity and cultural development don't require comfortable conditions, but rather emerge from the fundamental human drive to create meaning and beauty even under the harshest circumstances. Living in 300 CE means you're witnessing and participating in historical processes that will shape human civilization for millennia. The religious transformation happening around you, the gradual triumph of Christianity over traditional polytheism, represents one of history's most significant cultural changes. The economic innovations, social institutions, and cultural developments of your time will influence human societies long after the Roman Empire itself has fallen. Your daily struggles and small victories contribute to larger patterns of human development that extend far beyond individual experience. The mutual aid networks you participate in, the craft techniques you develop, the stories you tell, and the relationships you maintain all become part of humanity's collective inheritance. The Roman legal system, engineering achievements, and administrative innovations emerging from your civilization will provide foundations for future societies. Even the languages people speak thousands of years in the future will carry Latin words and grammatical structures developed by people facing the same daily challenges that define your own existence. Despite the vast differences between life in 300 CE and modern existence, certain human experiences remain remarkably constant across time. People worry about their families, work hard to provide for their children, find joy in simple pleasures, and seek meaning through religious faith and community connection. Parents in your time show the same love and concern for their children that modern parents feel, even though infant mortality rates make emotional attachment dangerous. Workers take pride in their craftsmanship and seek recognition for their skills, even though economic opportunities are severely limited. Communities celebrate achievements, mourn losses, and support members during crises in ways that would be immediately recognizable to people from any historical period. The human capacity for hope, creativity, and mutual support transcends specific historical circumstances. People facing unimaginable hardships still find ways to laugh, love, create beauty, and maintain dignity. These fundamental human qualities make survival possible while providing the cultural foundation for future progress. Waking up in the year 300 CE means joining an eternal human struggle that continues across all historical periods. The effort to create meaning, maintain dignity, and build community in the face of mortality, uncertainty, and hardship. Your ancient predecessors faced these challenges with remarkable courage, ingenuity, and persistence that enabled not merely survival, but the creation of one of history's greatest civilizations. The networks of mutual aid, systems of cultural transmission, and innovations in technology and social organization that emerge from daily survival needs provide foundations that support human progress across millennia. Every small act of cooperation, creativity, or compassion contributes to larger patterns of human development that ultimately make possible all the achievements and opportunities of subsequent ages. Living in 300 CE teaches essential lessons about human resilience, the importance of community, and the ways that ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges create the cultural and social foundations that enable extraordinary achievements. Your experience in this ancient world illuminates both how far humanity has progressed and how much the fundamental human spirit remains constant across all times and circumstances. The morning light breaking over Rome in 300 CE carries the same promise that greets every generation: the possibility that today's struggles might contribute to tomorrow's achievements, that individual efforts might serve collective purposes, and that human dignity and hope can survive even the harshest conditions. In learning to live in that ancient world, you discovered timeless truths about what it means to be human in any age.